been leaked a document from the heart of government which reveals the exact words that Attorney General Geoffrey Cox used on a conference call last month when he was outlining the legal arguments in favour of a prorogation of Parliament to the rest of the Cabinet when Boris Johnson was briefing the Cabinet for this exceptional event which has been overturned by the Supreme Court today. Now, the Attorney General Geoffrey Cox recommended that the Cabinet and the government go ahead with this because it was completely legal. The details of the Cabinet call were published by the High Court last month as part of the disclosure documents that led to this Supreme Court case that culminated today. But the section I'm about to read you was redacted. The 5 or so lines at the bottom of one of the pages were blacked out, deemed too sensitive to reveal to the public. But Sky News has obtained them right now. Let me read them to you. They say, the Attorney General told his Cabinet colleagues, the Attorney General said that his advice on the question of whether or not this was lawful was that this was lawful and within the Constitution. Any accusations of unlawfulness or constitutional outrage were motivated by political considerations. And then he said that the proposal was compatible with a piece of recent Northern Ireland emergency legislation. So let's just put that in context. This morning, the 11 Supreme Court justices ruled unanimously that a court could decide whether prorogation was legal and did decide that this prorogation was not legal. But the government, acting on the advice of the Attorney General, the most senior law figure in the government, the Cabinet was told on a conference call last month that this wouldn't happen, that this moment wouldn't arise because it was lawful and constitutional. I think this is deeply embarrassing for Geoffrey Cox. I've spoken to Downing Street in the last half an hour since getting the document. They make clear that they're not going to comment on this. I'm sure that lots of other people will wade in. There's an extraordinary blame game to be had about how the government ended up in this mess. But what is clear is that the Attorney General said it would be fine, and it wasn't fine. So questions for him. Sir Keir Starmer, in the last 10 minutes, suggesting that Sir Geoffrey Cox may have to resign over this issue.
So, what do you think, Sam? It's certainly incredibly embarrassing for him, isn't it?
I think that this is just part of a tsunami of bad news for Boris Johnson today. The issue of legal advice has been troubling Cabinet ministers ever since this issue first came up. We've heard reports that Julian Smith in Cabinet was asking for fuller advice. Boris Johnson says, yes, I'll get it to you. And then it never emerged. I know other Cabinet ministers are deeply worried about Boris Johnson's approach to the law, his hints and his suggestions that he might be prepared to break it. Don't forget, he was the one that gave that interview to the Mail on Sunday, the Prime Minister comparing himself to the Incredible Hulk and suggesting he can break free of the manacles of laws that he doesn't like. That is an awkward situation for other Cabinet ministers, many of whom are lawyers themselves, to find themselves in. But I suppose it's part of the defence of Boris Johnson that here he has his Attorney General, one of the most respected QCs in the land, saying it was legal. But it's embarrassing for Geoffrey Cox that when it was tested, it was found not to be.